It's wonderful to be here this morning. So, how do we accelerate digital transformation in uncertain times? And what are some of the key factors that can help drive success for companies that are going through this process? So, today I'd like to share with you some of the key learnings that I've gathered over the last 20 years of my experience in digital transformation advisory and drive you through or walk you through some of the key elements that probably you can take learnings from as well. First of all, let's take a short trip back in time. In Greek mythology, Homer's Iliad described a great war between the Trojans and the Greeks. Now, the war spanned over 10 years, and the two armies fought, but never found, or there was no victory in sight. The Trojans favored Ares, which is the brutal god of war that practiced or preached very traditional, conventional strategies. And the Greeks, on the other hand, whose patron was Athena, the goddess of war, strategy, and art, focused on unconventional strategies. And they realized that traditional, conventional approaches was not going to help them win the war. And so the Greeks, with a combination of holistic and unconventional thinking and a little bit of creativity, built the Trojan horse, which is now quite famous. And they filled it with Greek warriors and convinced the Trojans that this was a gift. Now, as a result of this, the Greeks were able to penetrate the walls of Troy and eventually win the war. So Athena had defeated Ares. Now, in current modern times, as businesses face some very unconventional and unprecedented challenges, it's a little bit hard to imagine taking lessons from mythologies of ancient times. However, the current coronavirus pandemic has really made our past data and business strategies rather ineffective. And digital transformation as well as digital adoption has really been accelerated over the last couple of months across many industries and sectors, or almost all industries and sectors. And companies that are really truly going to be successful in digital transformation are going to be the ones that practice unconventional holistic thinking. And this is really the strategy of Athena. When all else fails, basically looking at using creative tools to think through conventional challenges. Now, digital transformation, when we deliver digital transformation, we have to do the exact same thing. There is a famous quote by world heavyweight champion Mike Tyson, and he said, "Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth." And the current coronavirus pandemic has really been a punch in the mouth for pretty much every company across most industries and sectors across the world. And we have really been caught off guard in terms of how to deal with this strategy or how to deal with this pandemic. And our current strategies have really been ineffective. And so the traditional systems that we've built around our businesses, the traditional processes, the way we manage people, all of these elements have completely changed over the last couple of months. The one silver lining, though, is the fact that the pandemic has really become a catalyst for digital disruption or digital acceleration and adoption. Now, the numbers you see on screen, you've probably seen them before, and you've probably seen many other similar figures. There's been a 7-year average acceleration of digital products that's been put out in the market over the last few months. 37% increase in global e-commerce traffic, as well as about 1 trillion estimated spending in digital transformation just for this year. So the silver lining that we see around the pandemic is really the acceleration of digital adoption as well as digital transformation. This can be a good thing as well as a bad thing. So many companies have responded very quickly to the pandemic by shifting to online and digital platforms. However, that has also created some challenges. One consumer goods company actually reached out to me earlier this year, and their online sales went through the roof. However, they very quickly descended into chaos as they realized that their inflexible and rigid internal processes and operations really could not deliver the customer requests and customer acquisitions that they were receiving. So we very quickly moved into a operations automation, as well as workaround process to find ways to deliver these, deliver on these requests, as well as to find hyper-localized plans or solutions for their supply chain and to deliver last mile goods to the customers. So there's a good and a bad that we see from the pandemic in terms of digital transformation. But I think the key here is not to focus on knee-jerk reactions or short-term solutions, but really to think holistically and to think of unconventional ways to respond to the pandemic. And this is exactly what is preached by Athena. So when we say digital transformation as a holistic solution, I really think of it in terms of building blocks that come together to offer organization-wide transformation. And these building blocks contain several different elements. Superior customer experience, for example, utilizing new digital channels and unconventional methods to offer great experiences for customers online and offline across any channel, delivering products and services via digital channels, as well as digitizing those products and services, as well as looking at people, process, and organizations, automation, optimization, and upskilling or refining your internal operations for the new environment. And finally, looking at business model shifts or pivots that can help you survive as well as thrive in this new uncertain environment. So when we look at these holistic solutions, what I'd like to do is actually deep dive into each four of the building blocks and give you some of the insights that I've developed over the last 20 years. The first quadrant or the first block looks at customer experience. Now, we've really seen global societies undergo an overhaul over the last few months. Now, people's behaviors have completely shifted in unexpected ways, driven by policies around safety and security, personal hygiene and environmental hygiene, social distancing, work from home, remote access, and all of these elements have really shifted consumer behaviors. And these shifts are also shifting business behaviors and business offerings. For example, when we look at consumption patterns that have changed over the last couple of months, people have shifted more towards value purchases, really looking at getting the most out of the money that they spend, as well as looking at essential purchases rather than nice to have. So focusing on purchasing goods and products around groceries, foods, essential daily necessities, personal hygiene, and these types of elements, rather than other product categories which have reduced significantly over the last few months. We also see a shift of channels as people have shifted away from physical engagement or touch points towards more digital engagement and touch points. And all of these elements have really contributed to low touch economy, which is really an environment where there's less need for physical interactions between people and businesses. And so the low touch economy is truly here to stay. A recent survey, consumer survey that was published by McKinsey highlighted that over 60% of global consumers have shifted away from having engagements or purchasing from their traditional brands, as well as gone towards more towards new patterns of consumption and new experiences. And these consumers are looking to stay in those consumption patterns and experiences rather than shift back to the old ways of doing things. So we're seeing this low touch economy really going into a permanent situation as we go past the COVID environment. And these shifts have also been a great catalyst for organizations. We've seen very, very creative ways that companies have responded to some of these low touch economy requirements. So they've expanded on the experiences that they've created for consumers. They've looked at digital and omni-channel optimization, as well as utilizing data as an asset in order to optimize the way they can provide value proposition or deliver to the customers in the market. The key element here, though, is really around digital operating models, really looking at delivering to your customer on an end-to-end value chain. A great example of this is PepsiCo. And the company very early on identified consumption patterns shifting during the first few months of COVID. And within a very short time period, in less than 30 days, they were able to set up a online direct-to-consumer platform called Pantry Shop. And this platform really allowed consumers to purchase products from their brand as well as subsidiary brands online and directly get it delivered to their homes. Now, this was a great initiative from them, which was hugely successful. However, development of the online platform was not the difficult part. The more challenging part was really the back-end operations and the operating model behind the whole system that allowed them to ensure that every single order was delivered on. The second element or the second building block is really around product digitization. And here we've seen companies take several different approaches. Now they've gone into either making existing products and services available on online channels, shifting or optimizing existing products for those online channels, as well as really creating digital native products and services that were new in order to optimize the kind of online virtual experience for customers. And there are some really great examples out there of companies that have been able to do this very successfully. The one that I'd like to highlight is Stage Kings, and they are basically a company that was building physical stages for events, conferences, and concerts. And of course, during the pandemic, their pipeline of business went down to zero, basically. And so what they did was look internally in terms of their existing capabilities in infrastructures and what was available to them in terms of their own expertise and what was needed by the market. And they shifted towards building standing tables. Now, most people were setting up setting up their kind of home remote work environment, and this demand for home workspace as well as tables, work tables and so on increased significantly. And so they were able to very quickly respond to this new increasing demand. Another great example is Annie Controls, and they are a company that basically produces snow blowers for ski resorts. And so they were able to modify their product to allow it or to enable it to disinfect large spaces. And so they were very quickly able to serve a very new market demand that was existing. So the real key here is to focus on real problems that you can solve, understand the context and value that your products and your infrastructure and capabilities can bring to the market in this new environment, and utilize technologies and personalization as well as data in order to offer these new solutions to the market. The third building block is really around operations, people, and processes. And here we have to focus on trying to find new ways to manage your business and manage the people in your business. Now, the pandemic has really forced organizations to close the trust gap with employees, where you had to trust as a management team or an organization leadership team, you had to start to trust that employees were going to do what they needed to do in their home environment or remote environments. And this was a key requirement, basically embracing new agile ways of working and embracing new environments or new ways to interact and engage with employees. And so we saw companies and leadership teams switch into smaller working teams, breaking down organizational silos, and really starting to work in more agile ways where you focus on specific decisions, specific needs of the market, specific things that needed to be produced in short timeframes, and become a lot more agile in that space. And this may have also included empowering employees, upskilling them and making sure that they were ready for this new environment, and also transforming some of the policies and governance structures that you've had to date within your organization. Some of them may have needed to be broken down or even redefined altogether. A great example here is Haier, which is a Chinese company that produces consumer electronics as well as home appliances. And around 10 years ago, they decided to make this massive shift in terms of how they engage and manage their employees. So they shifted from the traditional organization structures into self-managing micro enterprises, basically teams of people that worked quite independently as if they were entrepreneurs. And this has proven to be hugely successful today in the pandemic environment, because they were one of the few companies that were able to go back to full capacity in February, and they were able to deliver 99.8% of their production capacity from that point onwards. And finally, we look at the business model building block. And here, before even shifting your business model away from your core capabilities, we need to really look at what value proposition you can bring to the market, or what value proposition your transformation is going to bring to the market. And here, we would look at truly understanding the shifts in the market needs. So we talked about how the shifts have gone, consumers have shifted towards value and essential purchases, the low touch and remote experiences, as well as prioritizing safety and health, and hyper-localized supply chains and so on. And so once we understand these shifts in the market and consumer behaviors, we can couple that with technology capabilities, either technology enablers, standard technologies that should already exist in your company, or new technologies that could be implemented fairly quickly to deliver on new business models that could help you not just survive, but also thrive in the new business environment. A great example here is Snapbar, and this is a company that was focused on event management and promotion and marketing of events. And of course, during the pandemic, they were completely, the pipeline of business completely stopped. And so they started looking at the shifts in market needs and where they could deliver or utilize their own experiences and their own expertise and capabilities for those market needs. And so one thing they identified was many small, medium-sized enterprises in the cities that they were operating in were basically suffering from the pandemic. And so they coupled this idea into a new business model, where they created boxes of goods that could be packaged and sent out to companies that consisted of all these products that were being produced by the small, medium-sized companies. So these were little packages that could be sent to employees, to individuals, to personal, as kind of personal gifts, as well as virtual event gifts and so on. And this has been hugely successful for them, but it was a big pivot away from what they were doing before. To summarize, when we look at accelerating digital transformation in uncertain times, we really need to focus on the different building blocks that make up digital transformation and try to think outside of the traditional business boundaries and utilize unconventional creative strategies in order to deliver new solutions, or solutions that can help us survive and thrive in these environments. And leveraging data and technology solutions is really a key within this space. But we need to also then take a step back and look or think holistically about our solution, or about business transformation as a whole. Consider the customer's value chain and how they are going to be using your products or services, or how they're going to be interacting with your business, what their needs are in the market, and how that need is going to evolve over time, as well as redefining your own end-to-end operating model to ensure that you can deliver across your value chain and all those customer interactions. And finally, stay focused on people. And this includes being customer focused, but also people focused or employee focused, helping them to upskill and empowering them to succeed in this new environment. And I'm really going to focus on the final bullet point, which is leadership teams need to take the front and center role here and be more agile and digital, and have a digital mindset, making sure that they drive organizations towards these success factors. So in dealing with uncertainty, we really focus on making sure we have a combination of strategy and creativity. This is a must for many organizations. And just like in the Trojan War, we need to think like the Greeks and think holistically about our challenges, but also thinking in unconventional terms and breaking up those traditional boundaries that we've been working within to date. And this is basically some of the key success factors that's going to help us survive in these uncertain times, as well as thrive in these uncertain times. So what I'd like to say in conclusion is really, let's take on more strategies that align with Athena rather than Eris, and really focus on facing the new business environment of the post-COVID situation with success. Now, before I leave you, I'd just like to highlight that we have a very strong set of capabilities and methodologies and tool sets that can help organizations accelerate digital transformation. And our collective over 40 years of business advisory and digital transformation advisory experience can really help companies come up with conventional as well as unconventional strategies that can be implementable, as well as deliver strong outputs and sustainable results for companies. So if you're interested, please reach out to us. We're happy to share more information with you. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Lardi, for sparing the time and joining us. Certainly, the touchless economy is one that is very welcome at a time when we are forced to keep that social distance. Ms. Lardi, we have a question that has come in from a participant, Mr. Vikas Katare from Jakarta Company has asked, how does digitization and Industry 4.0 provide competitive edge to supply chain to drive complex manufacturing industry?
So there's several different ways that digitization can drive or can push manufacturing supply chains forward. If we talk about, and what I like to typically do when I speak about these topics is break it down into kind of three areas. Firstly, looking at the current environment, how you want to deal with the current situation, which is really optimizing your operations. And here we can utilize, for example, robotics process automation or simple off-the-shelf solutions that can really optimize your existing processes within manufacturing. It can create better collaborations with between your suppliers and your partners, as well as help you source new supplies, hyper-localized supplies within your area, for example. The next stage is really looking at shifting into more advanced or innovative solutions. And here we can think about really optimizing your processes further by looking into additive manufacturing, for example. And the third element is really looking at disruptive technology applications. So something that I've been personally involved in is applying blockchain technology for supply chain traceability in the palm oil industry, for example. So there's quite a few new technology solutions that can help organizations really look at not just optimizing the current processes, but really taking them into kind of a new environment of supply chain transformation. And this could involve, for example, I'm not sure what industry the question comes from, but specifically if we think about 3D printing in terms of additive manufacturing, where 3D printing has played a huge role over the last couple of months in terms of printing parts, spare parts for ventilators, as well as printing different types of pieces or materials that can be done in a fairly low cost way, but can optimize and hyper personalize the manufacturing process as well. And today we're 3D printing houses, so there's huge opportunities in that space.